I've seen bodies torn apart in car crashes, watched blood turn sidewalks into crime scenes, and walked through homes where the silence was louder than any scream. But nothing haunts me quite like the case of the truck that disappeared. Not because of what we found, but because of what we didn't. It was mid-September in rural Nevada. Dry winds, long highways, and not much else. I got the call from the local sheriff, an old contact who dealt with a few messed up scenes in the past. He told me a freight truck had vanished. Not stolen, not hijacked, vanished. It belonged to a company called Walker Logistics, a mid-sized firm running refrigerated transport across state lines. The truck, a fully loaded 18-wheeler, was carrying over 20,000 pounds of high-grade beef, valued at nearly $500,000. The driver, 42-year-old Miles Harlan, was a veteran of the road. No criminal record, no debts, no drama. A ghost on paper, clean as they come. He was last seen refueling at a gas station outside Ely at 1:27 a.m. After that, nothing. No GPS signal, no phone activity, no roadside cameras picking up the plate. The truck didn't ping at way stations, toll booths, or rest stops. A vehicle that size doesn't just vanish into thin air. But it did. I started with the footage from the gas station. Harlan gets out, nods to clerk, pays in cash. Not unusual. But there's something off in his posture. He's stiff, like he's trying to look normal but failing. That's not fear. It's pressure, like he knows someone's watching. I rewind the tape. Behind him, parked by the air compressor, there's a black SUV. No plates, tinted windows. It doesn't move, doesn't refuel, just sits there, watching. I called in a contact from the FBI, someone who owed me for a favor back in El Paso. He ran a partial plate scrape from nearby surveillance, and we got a hit. The SUV was registered to a shell company dissolved 2 years ago. That kind of erasure doesn't happen unless someone wants to disappear. I interviewed Harlan's wife, Naomi. She was calm, too calm. I've spoken to women whose husbands went missing, and they fall into two camps, grief-stricken or angry. Naomi was neither. She told me they'd been distant. That Miles had grown quiet over the past month. Said he'd started locking his phone, disappearing for hours off route, talking less and less. When I asked if he'd mentioned any threats or trouble, she just shook her head, but there was something in her eyes. She was lying, but not out of malice. It felt like fear. The next break came when I traced a financial trail. Harlan had withdrawn $9,000 in cash 3 days before the disappearance. No pattern. Just one withdrawal, then nothing. Not enough for an escape, but enough for a bribe or a payoff. That's when I visited the route. Highway 50, famously called the loneliest road in America, and that's no exaggeration. For hours, it's just road, rocks, and radio silence. But halfway between Ely and Fallon, there's a narrow detour, State Route 722. Locals say no one uses it anymore since the main road got repaved. I drove it at dusk. 15 minutes in, I found something. Fresh tire marks. Dual axles. Deep grooves from weight. I followed them into a patch of wilderness barely visible from the road. That's when I saw the scorch marks. Charred brush, blackened soil. A controlled fire, just large enough to destroy a vehicle. But no frame. No remnants of the truck. Nothing metal, nothing electronic, except a scorch key fob half melted. That proved one thing. The truck was here, and someone didn't want it found. I sent the key fob to a private lab for analysis. The report came back 2 days later. The burn temperature exceeded 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's military-grade thermite, not something you pick up at a hardware store. Someone wanted to erase this truck completely. Engine, chassis, freight. Every last piece. But why? It wasn't about the beef. That was a decoy. I dug deeper into the shipping manifest. The meat had been loaded from a cold storage facility in San Bernardino. But the time stamps didn't line up. The truck was logged in at 7:04 p.m., but surveillance from the loading dock showed it arriving at 9:31 p.m., 2.5 hours unaccounted for. When I pulled the internal records, I found a second manifest buried in the logs. It listed a secondary, undeclared cargo, 14 unmarked crates, destination classified, no weight listed, no description. That's smuggling, and not just any smuggling. This was deliberate, high-level, and surgical. At this point, the FBI shut me out, stonewalled my requests, pulled a case from the sheriff. I was unofficial again, but I couldn't let it go. I confronted Naomi. At first, she denied everything. Then I told her about the crates, the thermite, the SUV. That's when she cracked. She said Miles had been approached by a man claiming to be federal. No badge, no ID, just a name, Vance. He offered Miles $50,000 to take a side job, no questions asked. Said it was national interest. Miles resisted, but they knew things about Naomi, about his daughter's school. They pressured him hard. She begged him not to do it, but he did. He wasn't supposed to disappear. He was supposed to deliver, then go back to normal. But something went wrong. Either he saw something he shouldn't have, or he tried to run. That's when they erased him. Miles Harlan didn't vanish. He was removed. And the truck? It wasn't stolen. It was a delivery system. Whatever was in those crates, it was never meant to be tracked. No paper trail. No evidence. Just 40 tons of steel and silence. To this day, there's no official report on what happened to Miles. No missing person case. No insurance payout. It's like he never existed. But I still carry the key fob in my drawer. As a reminder, some trucks don't get hijacked. They get buried. Some cases start small, a whisper, a gut feeling, an itch behind the eyes that won't go away. That's how it began with the man at the morgue. No ID, no wallet, just a torn hoodie, fractured skull, and a tattoo on his forearm that didn't match the body it was inked on. I was consulting with the NYPD on cold case anomalies, cases they couldn't quite close but didn't want to admit were unsolvable. That's when a medical examiner I trusted called me down to the city morgue. The body was tagged as a transient, victim of a fall from a third-story fire escape, open and shut. But the tattoo, it was what started everything. It was small, black ink, clean lines, a falcon perched on a dagger. At first glance, it looked generic, prison-style art, nothing special. But I'd seen that mark before, years ago, during a federal case tied to Eastern European gun runners. That exact symbol appeared in the case file of a man named Alexei Dragunov, a ghost operative, rumored assassin, officially dead since 2014, killed in a warehouse fire in Ukraine. That tattoo was his calling card, never publicized, classified to hell. So what was it doing on a dead drifter in New York? I pulled the autopsy photos and ran facial recognition. No match in domestic databases. No matches in Interpol either. But when I fed it through an old encrypted archive, let's just say it hit. Not on Alexei, but on a man named Theo Mercer, a U.S. citizen, born in Baltimore. Last seen 2 years ago. A college dropout with a DUI and a minor assault charge. No known ties to crime, military, or intelligence, which meant one of two things. Either Theo stole the tattoo, or Theo wasn't really Theo. I dug into Theo's life. Dead-end jobs. No family contact in years. But then I found something strange. 3 months before he vanished, he was working at a private security firm in D.C. On paper, just overnight building access control. But the firm was a shell, registered under a network tied to intelligence subcontracting. So now I had a tattoo belonging to a dead assassin on the body of a vanished security guard. I went back to the tattoo. Under high-res magnification, I noticed something most people would miss. A tiny mark embedded in the ink. A microdot, invisible to the naked eye, but not to me. I'd seen tech like this once in Berlin. When scanned, it revealed a string of coordinates. GPS points in upstate New York. Forested. Remote. I drove out that night. When I reached the site, I found a crumbling cabin, barely more than a ruin. But someone had been there recently. Boot prints in the dirt, fresh drag marks. Inside, the air was stale. I found blood traces on the floor, bleach residue, and a shattered camera lens. Whoever had used this place, they cleaned it like pros. Except for one thing. A burner phone, hidden behind the baseboard. It had one photo on it. A close-up shot of a man restrained to a chair, beaten, gagged, and tattooed. Same falcon, same dagger. Only this time, the tattoo was fresh, red, swollen, which meant the dead man in the morgue hadn't had the tattoo for long. It was planted on him, not a mark of identity, but misdirection. The question became, who planted it and why? Back in the city, I pulled street cam footage near where the body was found. It took hours, but I caught a glimpse, a figure in a black jacket, hood up, walking away for the alley at 3:12 a.m. The body was found at 3:29. I enhanced the footage. The figure had a limp, subtle but distinct. I ran a search for recent ER admissions involving leg injuries. That's how I found her, Mirakovic, 32, ex-military intelligence, discharged under questionable circumstances. She showed up at a Brooklyn ER with a torn ligament the night after the body was discovered. I tracked her down to a tenement apartment in Red Hook. She saw me coming, tried to run, but she wasn't fast enough. What she told me changed everything. Theo Mercer had been approached months ago by a man claiming to be from a defense contractor. Said they needed someone with low visibility, someone whose disappearance wouldn't make headlines. Theo took the money, flew overseas, and vanished. He was turned, reconditioned, physically altered, taught a new identity, a cleaner version of the ghost named Alexei. But something went wrong. He started remembering who he was, started asking questions. So they made him disappear, for real this time. Only someone wanted to send a message. The tattoo wasn't a clue. It was a warning. Mira had tried to save him. They were part of the same discarded assets program. She escaped. He didn't. She found his body after it was dumped and tattooed him herself. To force someone like me to notice, to dig. And I did. But that story never made the news. No headlines. No records. Just a body with the wrong tattoo and a silence that reeked of buried truth. I never saw Mira again. I still have the microdot scanner. Because when the next body shows up, I want to know if the ink is a lie. There are crimes that scream, and there are crimes that whisper. This one whispered, so faintly that at first no one noticed. A quiet street, a clean kitchen, a cold oven, and a girl that no one had seen in 7 days. I was asked to consult on a missing persons case in a suburb outside Chicago. A quiet, upper-middle-class neighborhood, the kind where everyone waves but no one really sees each other. The case involved a 19-year-old college student named Elise Carter, straight-A biology major. No record, no enemies. She vanished without taking her wallet, laptop, or even her shoes. Her mother called it impossible. Her father called it a phase. The local police called it voluntary disappearance. I called it bullshit. Elise's last known location was her parents' house. She'd been home for spring break, staying in her old room. Her car was still in the driveway. Her phone had gone dark the night she vanished. 11:18 p.m. precisely. No outgoing messages. No pings. Just silence. That night, according to the parents, she'd made herself tea, watched a documentary in the living room, then went upstairs to bed. But here's where it got strange. The next morning, the house was quiet. No signs of struggle. No signs of a break-in. Elise was gone, but the front door was locked from the inside, and the alarm system hadn't triggered. I walked through the house. Normal. Tidy. Almost too tidy. Like someone had taken the time to make sure it looked untouched. But in the kitchen, something caught my attention. The oven. Stainless steel. Digital panel. But the light inside was off, the display dead, and when I touched it, it was cold. Not just in use, but disconnected. I opened it anyway. Empty. Clean. Too clean. I asked the parents when the oven had last been used. The mother hesitated, said Elise had baked cookies that week, maybe Tuesday. But when I checked the home smart energy system logs, I found something odd. The oven had drawn power from 11:11 to 11:18 p.m. The exact time Elise's phone went dark. That meant two things. Elise had used the oven that night, and something happened to her in the exact window it was active. I examined the oven closer. No signs of malfunction, but the circuit breaker for that unit had been flipped manually, the only breaker in the house that had been touched. Someone had deliberately cut the power after it had been used, and they cleaned it. I had a forensic tech go over the oven's interior with a luminol spray, just in case. The glow lit up like a Christmas tree. Trace amounts of blood, microscopic but present, on the back panel, the inner rim, and the door seal. Something had bled inside that oven, and Elise never left the house. The police dismissed the findings as inconclusive. Could be old blood, they said, from raw meat. But I've seen meat splatter. I know patterns. This was an accident. This was an attempt to cook a body part, briefly, then erase the evidence. You don't do that unless you panic. So I started looking at the people who lived in that house. The father, Richard Carter, clean record, accountant, worked from home 3 days a week. But his browser history painted a different picture. Late-night visits to chat forums about controlling adult children, managing violent impulses, even posts on accidental overcorrection. Most were anonymous, but one username matched his email backup recovery. Then I dug into the smart home system again. Motion sensors in the hallway were triggered at 11:16 p.m. The system logged a sharp noise classified as kitchenware impact, and then sudden silence. But in the basement, the laundry machine started running at 11:34 p.m. A single cycle. Mixed load. 1 towel, 1 hoodie, and a pair of gloves. When I confronted the father, he played dumb. Pretended he didn't know how any of the smart systems worked. But I noticed something while we talked. His hand. Burn scar on the inside of the right wrist. Fresh. About a week old. The exact age of Elise's disappearance. A mistake. A rookie one. He denied everything. Said Elise must have run away. But I saw the fear in his eyes, not fear of loss. Fear of being found out. With no body, we couldn't make an arrest. Not yet, but I kept digging. 2 days later, I got a call from a neighbor. Said her dog kept digging near the Carter property line. Something smelled off. I went out myself. What I found wasn't a body. It was a metal baking tray, buried under less than a foot of soil, charred, warped by heat. On it, a few strands of burned hair fused to melted residue. DNA confirmed it. The hair was Elise's. We never found the rest. That tray was enough to charge him with destruction of evidence and obstruction, but not murder. Not yet. Still, every time I look at that oven, perfect, clean, and cold, I think about what kind of person uses it not to feed a family, but to erase one. Some crime scream. This one whispered, and it whispered from a kitchen no one ever questioned. Sometimes what looks like chaos is just a play, and everyone in it knows their lines. The call came in just after 2 a.m. A liquor store robbery gone wrong in downtown Denver. A clerk shot in the chest. One masked suspect dead on scene. 2 others escaped in a black SUV. At first glance, it looked like a standard smash and grab with too much adrenaline. But by the time I arrived on site, I could already tell something wasn't right. The crime scene was too neat. Glass was broken, but not scattered, like it had been swept, then staged. Bullet casings were spaced evenly, suggesting they were dropped, not fired in panic. And most telling of all, the security cameras weren't disabled. They were pointed deliberately toward the action. I've worked enough real robberies to know this. Real criminals don't perform for the cameras. So I started with a dead suspect. Young, male, mask still on, no ID. The bullet that killed him had entered cleanly. Center mass, fired by the clerk's legally registered .38. But when I checked the angle of the shot against the trajectory and powder burn, something didn't match. The clerk had fired after the suspect was already on the ground. It wasn't a defensive shot. It was an execution. And that's when I realized this wasn't a robbery. It was a rehearsal. I requested security footage from the previous week. Late hours. Same clerk. Same closing routine. But here's what stood out. Every night, the same man came in 5 minutes before closing. Bought nothing. Just walked in, checked his phone, then walked out. Same clothes. Same route. He was scouting the timing, mapping the space, practicing. I pulled his face from one of the security stills and ran it through facial recognition. Got a hit, Malcolm Redding, former theater actor, local drama teacher, no criminal record. But then something caught my eye, his car, a black SUV, registered under his name. It matched the escape vehicle seen, leaving the crime scene. I tracked Malcolm to a small, run-down rehearsal space downtown, and what I found inside made my stomach knot. Printed scripts, real ones, titled The Robbery, dialogue highlighted, movements blocked out, each line of action choreographed down to the second. 3 actors, each assigned a role. One would act aggressive, one would panic, one would get shot. It wasn't just a robbery. It was a performance with a built-in casualty. The script even included cues for camera angles, dialogue to recite for police questioning, and a final stage direction. Clerk fires. 1 actor down. Curtain. It was stage murder. And I hadn't even gotten to the worst part. The dead suspect? He wasn't a criminal. His name was Jordan Hale. He was 17, a drama student at Malcolm's school. His parents thought he was at a sleepover the night he died. He didn't know it was real. The bullet that killed him wasn't supposed to be loaded. At least, that's what Malcolm told the other 2 during rehearsal. It's all fake, he said. We'll film it, make it viral, expose how easy it is to manipulate law enforcement. But someone put a live round in the gun, and that someone knew exactly what they were doing. I confronted the store clerk, Ben Rourke, a retired stagehand from the same theater company Malcolm used to work for. His hands shook when I told him what I knew. He didn't deny it. Said he was tired of being invisible. Said they were making a statement. He thought the kid had a vest. That was all smoke and blanks. When he realized Jordan was really dead, he flipped the breaker, wiped the prints, and staged the scene again to make it look like an amateur job. Malcolm disappeared 2 days later. I found his car near a frozen reservoir. Inside the trunk, 2 suitcases, one full of stage props and the other full of burner phones, fake IDs, and $5,000 in cash. He was never seen again. But sometimes I still watch the footage. The moment the 3 suspects enter. The way Jordan flinches before anything happens. The way the other 2 pause, just for a second, when the gun goes off. They weren't expecting death. But Malcolm was. He wrote it, rehearsed it, directed it, and walked away before the curtain ever fell. There are crimes that begin with a scream, and others with something as quiet as a bus ticket. This one started with a voicemail from a woman named Dana Mallory, 35, single, paralegal, lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment near Kansas City. The message was shaky, like she was whispering in the dark. If anything happens to me, look in the drawer by the fridge. It's there. The ticket. I didn't buy it. I don't even know who did. 2 days later, Dana was gone. No sign of forced entry. No blood. No broken glass. Her car was still in the garage. Cell phone, laptop, purse, all left behind. It looked like she vanished into thin air, except for one thing. In the drawer she mentioned, wrapped in a takeout menu and duct tape, was a one-way Greyhound bus ticket, departing at 4:40 a.m., heading to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Paid in cash. No return. And no fingerprints. Not even Dana's. I reviewed security footage from the bus station that morning. No sign of Dana. But at exactly 4:38 a.m., A woman boarded using that ticket. Hoodie up, sunglasses, head down. She never looked at the camera, didn't speak to anyone, just nodded when asked for ID. I froze the frame, enhanced it. It wasn't Dana. The woman was taller, different posture, and if you look closely, you could see something strange, a faint square outline beneath the hoodie, like a wire or small recording device taped to her chest. Someone had used Dana's identity to disappear, and the real Dana never made it to that bus. But why would someone go through that trouble? I started tracing her life backwards. Dana had no criminal record, no known enemies. But 2 weeks before her disappearance, she'd filed a sealed internal report at the law firm where she worked, citing client misconduct and falsified documentation. The partner she reported was Jason Klein, a high-profile defense attorney with a reputation for cleaning up dirty messes. That report never saw daylight. The firm buried it, but Dana hadn't stopped. I found notes on her apartment whiteboard, names circled in red ink. One stood out, Project Echo. Below it, a single line. They erased people and replaced them. At first, I thought she was spiraling. Paranoia, delusion. But then I dug deeper. Project Echo wasn't a fantasy. It was a real offshore contractor used by private firms to vet and reposition sensitive witnesses or problematic employees. The catch? They worked under the radar, using identity swaps, synthetic biometrics, and psychological rewiring. A legal ghost-making service. I tracked down a former Echo technician in El Paso, retired, terminally ill. He agreed to talk off the record, said they used to call it identity laundering. The goal was simple: remove the risk, retain the story. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If your girl had a secret someone wanted buried, they didn't kill her. They rewrote her." I asked how. He told me about a method. Isolate the subject, break routine, introduce gaslighting triggers, random messages, unknown purchases, distant footsteps. Then, when the subject starts to question reality, disappear them, not by force, by confusion. Make them walk into the van themselves. Suddenly, Dana's voicemail made perfect sense. She wasn't hiding the ticket to escape. She was terrified of it. She knew someone was trying to make her disappear, and she left the only breadcrumb she could. But here's the twist. I got a hit from a facial recognition system 6 weeks later. Dana, or someone identical to her, spotted entering a private tech facility in Nevada, escorted by 2 men in black polo shirts. No luggage, no ID check, just a silent nod and the opening of a steel door. I tried getting access. Nothing. No public records. No employee lists. No entry logs. Just that single image. Whoever she was now, she wasn't Dana Mallory anymore. But the woman in that footage, she turned to look at the camera for just a second before disappearing behind that door. And in her eyes, I swear she was screaming. But no one could hear it, because no one even remembered she was gone.